Sorry about that, folks. I went through almost 20 minutes here without it being on recording. And if it is on recording, I wasn't aware of it. Sorry about that. For-profit businesses, corporations, large firms, small to medium-sized companies, consulting or coaching. Those can be individual or those can be small firms or, again, medium or large. Starting your own business, franchise, multi-level marketing, turning a hobby into a money-making venture. Healthcare is a tremendous part of the economy. I haven't heard anybody talk about healthcare directly here tonight, but I was peripherally involved from a pharmaceutical manufacturer standpoint in healthcare. I was not involved in hospitals or clinics or any of that. But there are lots and lots of job openings in these areas if it fits you, okay? And it's not easy to be in healthcare these days. Legal or regulatory, entertainment, and then a whole bunch of other ones that I will get to here. Government, public sector, federal, state, county, and local, despite all of the cutbacks that have been happening over the past several months, which candidly I think is a very smart thing to be doing. I'm not sure the way it's being done is all that healthy, because it's a poor representation of what the private sector does in terms of managing their people or managing their staffing, and downsizing. First responders, law enforcement, firefighting, military, education and colleges, universities. All of you have been in one form or another. Primary and secondary schools, nonprofit organizations, cause-related, political, church or ministry, or other philanthropic organizations. Again, there are more than this, but this is a pretty tight list, or at least an umbrella for a pretty tight list. And as you may remember from yesterday, we are now headed to first base in terms of putting your value proposition together. And the way we do that at first is defining your objectives. Written objectives are the most critical thing that I find when I'm working with a client, because it gives you a runway to land on and to take off from. It keeps you focused and it keeps you from going off the rails. You could get on LinkedIn or any of the job boards and find 100, 200, 500 jobs that would potentially fit your background, or you could qualify for. But unless you're going to be really passionate about it, and unless you know people in the organization, and unless you're in a situation where you know directly that that would be the next position in your career, I often recommend people don't directly apply, because the response rate is only 0.5% to 1%. That's like 1 out of 100 to 1 out of 200. And because all you need to do these days is click a button, it seems like, oh, I just applied for that job. But you really haven't. You've just thrown yourself into the black hole. Okay. So what I do with this, with any of the clients that I'm working with, is let's put together a summary statement that reflects what you're looking for. And this will be part of your homework for tonight. Some of you probably know what this is and could do this like right now. But in this case, and actually this same one I've used twice with two different clients over a 5-year period. They ironically had very, very similar backgrounds and objectives. To find a senior manager, director, VP position in sales, business development, or marketing that was within 30 miles. One of them was in New York, one of them is in New Jersey. The role could be in several industries such as media, video production, movie theater, or other related services, with a base salary between 75 and 100K and an upside to 150K. Okay, I've also had creative directors who wanted to do a similar type of situation as this, and we would just call it, instead of sales, business development, or marketing, we would call it creative director, art director, copy director, whatever it might happen to be. I'm saying this obviously for you, Chris, directly, but the more focused you are on this, and the more you can focus on the industries that you want to be in, the better success you'll have. It's easier. You can go wide and broad, but if you're a generalist, it's much harder than if you're very deep and narrow in a specific industry or in a field, with a skill set or with industry experience. Okay. The other thing is pursuing a passion. Paula mentioned it last night. I'm not sure if that's who is on the iPhone. If you could say hello or pull yourself off mute, that would be great. Allow yourself to find your passion and figure out a way to monetize it. Has anybody ever seen these 4 letters put together, ICNU? Anybody know what that might mean? It is, I see in you blank. I see that you could be an unbelievably good aeronautical engineer, or I see that you could be a terrific division manager for our sales team, whatever it might be. When people say things to you, like I've talked to my daughter about this for years. When she was 6 years old, she went over to a friend's house. They were playing in her friend's bedroom. And 3 hours later, all of her friends' toys, clothes, and every other thing in the room was completely organized and put back into the drawers. At 6 years old, my daughter's doing this. And I'm saying, listen, girl, you could make $100 to $150 an hour doing this for people who just don't want to be bothered. One day she will, I believe. So the I see in you can happen from a long time ago. It doesn't have to be from, last week or last year, whatever it might be. And there's another guy who is a tech expert in one of the coaching circles I'm in. When he was 10 years old, he was writing code in India that stumped his teacher at age 10. And so he now has a business that spans the entire world, and people come to him because of his technical expertise in all kinds of areas. Okay, so is reinvention part of what you may need to do? Okay, and I say this, this is more of a job fair conversation. But if your function, role, industry, or experience are not in demand, like in pharmaceuticals or telecommunications, you haven't seen any buggy whip salesmen, I'm sure, in your lifetime. They used to make a lot of money before the automobile became popular and horses and buggies didn't exist. Contrast it with growing industries. Okay, we're talking in 6.5 years of doing job fairs, I saw one web developer. Anybody with real social media expertise can find a position like the door couldn't hit them in the butt and they'd have another job. Construction, contractors, there's all kind of trade roles. I'm not talking about it for most of you who are on this call, but there are industries that are just screaming for people. It's the supply and demand related to the output, the services, the products that they make or use or complete is incredibly valuable in lots of areas. And how many of you have a plan B? And I like to call a plan B something that you can do either as a hobby or on a part-time basis so that it will supplement your income, number one. And number two, if you really wanted to, it can become your plan A. I know a lot of people who've done this with a part-time business, with a multi-level marketing company. And James, you're raising your hand. Go ahead. You're on mute.
I have a plan B, but I would just said yes.
Okay, understood. So this could be a lot of different things. I mean, I know people who do investments on the side. I'm a little bit wary of crypto because you can make a lot of money in it, but you can lose a lot too. But any kind of secondary income that can become your primary source of income is certainly worth looking at in today's day and age, because average employment tenure is just 2.8 years. Okay, down from an average of over 5 in the 80s. Okay, now obviously that's a long period of time we're talking about, but income from these sources: investments, rental properties, franchises, hobby into a business, multi-level marketing companies, and there are many of them that are very good with reliable products and or services. There are a lot of dogs out there that have made gotten bad reputations, but the ones who've lasted 20, 25 years or more, and there are several of them, are could be worth looking into. And I'm going to skip this slide. And what is your value proposition? What recruiters and hiring managers don't want? Okay, they don't want to know about your duties, responsibilities, and activities. Okay, which is probably 90% of the resumes that I see either have all of the bullet points are duties, responsibilities, and activities, or enough of them that they cover up what the real thing that recruiters and hiring managers really want to find out about, which is your accomplishments, your contributions, what your assets and your skills are, and the ways you've added value to an organization. And this can be in academia, it can be in your professional experience, it can be in hobbies outside of it. I mean, if you have expertise in a certain jujitsu Thai martial arts area and you have a black belt of whatever degree, it's worth putting that on your resume for a couple of reasons. It shows you had the discipline to do that, number one. Number two, if somebody on the other side knows that and has participated in that, you have a connection point that you would not have had if you didn't put it on your resume. I've always been very big on putting my constructive hobbies on my resume, related to sports and charity groups and church activities and stuff like that. And especially if you've had leadership positions, that can be really important. And Scott, I'm talking to you when I speak to this. Okay. One of the things that I found in marketing, which I did for 23 years for large, medium, and small corporations, when I was doing market research on whether a product would succeed in the marketplace, I looked at 5 variables. And I wouldn't call them variables, I would just call them attributes. What about you, or what about the product or service, which in the job search world is you, makes you unique, compelling, ownable, valuable, and affordable? Okay, those 5 words the unique note is probably unique and compelling are probably the most important. Okay, you could be unique and have purple hair, but somebody can copy you, so that's not ownable. And it's not necessarily compelling unless you're, I don't know, pick a job that purple hair would be important for. Is it valuable? Are they going to pay you for it? And are you affordable? Okay, a lot of people who walk into job search situations after they've had X amount of experience, they've made $200,000, $300,000 a year, they assume they can do the same thing for somebody else. Maybe, maybe not. You have to demonstrate your value is worth that. What I found is if you have 4 or 5 out of these 5, you will definitely win in terms of job search. I had a couple of products that I introduced, about 50 of them that I introduced, products, line extensions, etc., that were 5s, and they definitely were winners. 2 of them were $10 million plus in less than a year revenue. And I mean, that's not in the pharmaceutical industry, that's not huge, but I was in the over-the-counter side of that business. So 10 million revenue was very important because the profit margins were so good. Okay, so what are your skills? This is Ms. Interviewer here looking to see what your skills are. You do not want to sit across the desk and show the skills as being this, because is this showing through here? Can you see this? I don't know. Some of you you're not on video here, so I can't tell. But it's entertaining, but it's not going to be valuable. And what I'm going to show you next are some resume circumstances that I have found to be really important. This is a client that I worked with back in 2021, master's degree in accounting, and some really good internship experience along the way. Once we completed his title, summary statement, and key skill sets, he was getting interviews left and right. He's with a major accounting firm now in New Jersey. He's been promoted twice in 4 years. And this is a little bit difficult to see, but you get an idea that a summary statement and those key skill sets with the title gives the reader an understanding of what you're going to be for them. And the reason why this is important and why there's a lot of bold, there's some underlines, there's some other things in there is you get 6 seconds for somebody to look at your resume the first time they see it. They may, if you get an interview, they may look at it for a minute or two, but you need to highlight whatever it is that you can do in providing value very, very explicitly, or else it'll get lost. I've seen some resumes with some of the biggest accomplishments somebody has buried at the bottom, and they don't talk about it in a way that's necessary. Okay. So resumes need to highlight accomplishments, contributions, and how you added value. It must be clear, compelling, and concise. And that's where artificial intelligence will not necessarily help you out, because you get a good thought about what it is you need to do, but you're not going to get a good summary of what somebody's actually looking for or the detail related to that. Okay. I'm going to take the liberty, if I can figure out how to get out of this PowerPoint here. Give me a second. No, don't want to do that. to escape this, and I want to change my screen to let's see if I can do this here, to a resume that James has given me permission to show you. Okay. I'm not going to show you his previous resume because it was not nearly as good as he is the bottom line. I mean, I could find it, but it doesn't really matter. So the reason I'm showing you this is so I can take you top to bottom. The top 2 inches are what sets the tone for everything that you have and say about yourself in your resume. Everything below your professional experience line needs to be defined in terms of what your general duties are, and then accomplishment related in terms of what your bullet points are. Like one of the big things that we talked about with James, and he received top supervisor out of 60 twice in the last 7 months. He also achieved schedule adherence of 89%, and the goal was only 75%. These are things that he was aware of, but didn't realize they were important for a resume. All right, James, any other thoughts after we had just finished your resume over the weekend?
I really didn't know like to build myself up with like the awards that I received at work. I thought it was just like skills.
Right.
So like thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it also happens to be that he was conveniently omitting the fact that he was an All-American left tackle at Trinity University. And I'm like, dude, you got to tell people this. Okay. Getting to that level of expertise in any activity is worth highlighting. Okay. He also had some other on-campus experience. We have 5 lines about his on-campus experience based on things that are, in my mind, very, very relevant to both skill sets and leadership in the corporate world. Okay. And then technical skills and all that, some certifications, memberships, volunteer work, and hobbies. Again, I am one who likes to put those on there. There are some people who just put their college degree and their graduate degree. That's all they want to say about themselves, which is fine. But I think people need to know you as a human being as much as anything else. There's another gentleman here that I worked with as a contractor for another organization who has a slightly different format and layout. And I have about 12 format and layouts, but this one here is similar. They put the core competencies, I call them key skills. They put their key accomplishments up here, near the top of the resume, which is fine. But I find it to be redundant if your key accomplishments are listed here and then also in your professional experience, which in this case they were. But the key combination here of laying out what your duties, responsibilities are, and then highlighting what your accomplishments in that environment were, that's what really matters. Okay, we can get down to the bottom here. I know I'm flipping through this quickly, but we had some early career stuff that we didn't want to put any detail about or any dates. We also had a college degree, a master's degree, and part of another college degree on here as well. So these are the kinds of things that, as we are working together, will bubble up to the surface. Okay, and this is where my background in marketing, advertising, public relations, etc., and thousands of presentations to senior management, sales teams, retail buyers, etc., in terms of telling a story in bullet point form that will get people to act in the way you want, which of course in the job search is to get further in the interview process and eventually get the offer. All right. I could spend 2 hours on this one slide, but I'm only going to do it on the one slide. And let me just go back to where you can see it again. Hold on. Okay. LinkedIn is really, really important these days. I can't emphasize it enough because it's your online website, whether you like it or not, and it's free. You can get the $30 a month premium, but unless you're sending out 10, 15, 20 messages a month, whatever it is, there's really no need to. It's personalized. It's a little less formal. It doesn't have to be in the third person like a resume does, but it must highlight your unique value. The one thing about LinkedIn that's really, really good is that you can be perceived as a subject matter expert very, very quickly. If you post the right things at the right time, you have a reputation. You'll get a following. Facebook is similar, Instagram is similar, but LinkedIn is far more professional in terms of the way you approach it. Okay, so any questions, thoughts, or anything else up to this point? I've been doing a lot of talking here, and just wanted to get some of your thoughts, reactions, or questions that may be coming up. If not, I have a couple more slides, and then we're good to go. Okay, so your day 2 homework, you can take a screenshot of this if you'd like, is to list as many of your accomplishments as you can. And I would say shoot for at least 5 or 2 for every position you've had. Okay, and put them in this format. And I'm going to go one slide forward here for a second. Just giving you an example. Description of the accomplishment: grew sales territory by 24% versus year ago. Territory was declining 10 to 20% each of the last 3 years. So what actions did this person take? This is a real accomplishment for a client. Developed 125 new contacts, 35 became clients, followed up with 75 previous clients who hadn't been contacted in 2 or 3 years. So those are the action steps. The results were 24% increase in sales, are important. So whenever you have measurements that you can say, and Chris, I'm speaking with for you right now. In an ad agency world, it's somewhat difficult unless you can measure impressions, you can measure what their business was before your campaign and what their business was after campaign. Clients will usually, not always, usually give up that information. Okay, they don't always do it, but they usually give it up because they want to brag about it. And you should brag about it too. If the work that you did got the messaging out there in a way that they weren't able to do before you jumped on board. Okay, so I'm going to go back to one slide. Job description. Type of field of work, location, compensation, your work environment, your colleagues. You might want to say remote or hybrid or some version of what you want to do, or if you want to work for a specific company. Tomorrow, we're going to get into outreach. When you have this ideal job description that really suits you and it lines up with that Venn diagram that I showed you yesterday, I can pull it up again, but I'll do it tomorrow. But to you in terms of the search, it makes your job a lot easier. Okay, so, and just one other thing is, this is the book I've been referring to that I
breaking up, Bill.
Bill, you're breaking up.
It's called Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career. I'm breaking up or no?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
are. A couple of times.
Okay, let me try that again. It may have been the
I didn't get your last 2 slides, but don't worry about it. You're breaking up.
okay. Everybody else feeling or hearing the same thing or not hearing me? Am I breaking up now?
You're fine right now, but you were a moment ago.
You're fine.
Maybe not.
Let me go back a couple of slides. Did everybody get a chance to take a screenshot of this?
Yes.
Okay. And if that's the case, then this is just about, again, all the exercises that I was referring to earlier, and many other ones that are in the workbook that's Finding God's True Purpose for Your Career. If we haven't yet connected on Facebook or LinkedIn, this is me. I was in LinkedIn jail for a little over 2 years. I'm up to like 12 connections, which I'll be working on more in the coming weeks. Facebook, I have a lot more of a presence, and I will be increasing both here as the summer months come along. I mentioned last night that if you would like to have lifetime access to the recordings and a copy of the ebook and a bonus one-on-one call, that VIP is $47, and you can Zelle or Venmo me. I will be sure to fill in record the first 20 minutes separately. So it'll be 6 recordings. It'll be 4 full ones, and then today, which will be two, which one I'm going to record separately, and the second one I've already recorded. The last, let's see, 30 minutes or so I've already been recording. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, reactions? You're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling good, or whatever it might be. Everybody's on mute. Go ahead, Scott.
Bill, when I joined earlier, it did say it was already recording, so I'm not sure if it was or wasn't, but it on my end it seemed like it was.
Okay, I'll find out when it'll send me the Zoom link to see if it does, then I'm fine. But
Gotcha.
It sent me the Zoom link for last night. Okay, any again thoughts, questions, reactions?
For myself, I think one of the more difficult things is getting these accomplishments out onto paper, so to speak. I know, Bill, you and I have done it in the past. But quantifying, being able to quantify some of these things, like you had mentioned, I'm not privy to some of that information all the time. So in the design world, so it's hard to quantify some of those things.
Some you have to use a qualitative assessment. Sorry, I got to take a drink. Hold on. A qualitative accomplishment, which could be something like this: developed a complete from scratch campaign in 6 months, and you may not know the impact of that campaign yet. You may never know. But if you say you developed all of the advertising components, from traditional advertising to online advertising to social media to a website, whatever it is, that was all consistently branded. And in your case, what I've found is if you have an iPad with some examples of these, particularly when you get into an interview, or you create a link to a website that contains all these, the ones that can be shown, then you put yourself in a place where the interviewer or the organization or whatever it might be, they have to take a look. Okay. To different campaigns that you've done, or you have a homepage with a few examples and then some drop downs that have a specific number of campaigns, then you're putting yourself in the, oh, I see what this guy did type of situation. Okay. Or you can even, I mean, I'm making it up. I'm not sure what that means right now for you, but the goal is to provide the reader or the interviewer or the hiring manager or the
Freezing up again.
Can't hear you.
Oh. Now it's completely done.
We can see you now, Bill.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There it is.
Okay, can you hear me any better on this device?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, good. So I don't think it was the device. I think it was the Wi-Fi here, which is occasionally a little skittish, but that's okay for right now. If this is clear, then I'll stay in this mode. Anyway, the bottom line is, and I didn't mention this before, but effectively it's exactly what I'm about to say. Hold on a second. I'm on video. I've taken the presentation out. A resume is a glorified print ad. with a headline, a subheading, and all the reasons why somebody should reach out to you for, in whatever reason that might, whatever reasons that might be. In mind, as when you're looking at a website and you see the homepage and you see where the fold is, what do you want to see above the fold? What do you want to see when you're, looking at a new app or something, if you want to download the app or not? Keep that in mind as you're thinking about your resume. I mean, a resume is a construct. Obviously, it's a page or 2 pages, whatever it is, that still are compelling the reader to say, I need to send this guy or this woman an email or make a phone call. I need to reach out or connect with them on LinkedIn or her, whatever. It's okay. It is a door opener. Okay. It will not get you the job. It will prevent you from getting a lot of jobs if it's not good. Okay. And the other thing about a good resume and a good LinkedIn profile is that as you go through the interview process, the individual or the committee or the group, all they have left after you leave the room or you leave the Zoom call or whatever it is your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and whatever they remember about you. So as long as all of those are solid, the chances of you getting further along in the interview process are very high. All right. So again, it's like building a house. You dig a hole, you put the foundation in place, which is like the first day and a half of this. The second half of today is, putting the studs up, like your resume, LinkedIn profile, and putting the sheetrock on, and then it's the roof, and then all of the fixtures and all of that, which is you don't have the house built until you build it from the bottom up. And that's what this whole process is as well.
So can I ask a question?
Sure. No, this is Q&A time. Yes, absolutely.
So then what I'm trying to do is reinvent myself, right? So I like your call out of a print ad, because basically I want people to be calling me. So I think perhaps I don't know whether a resume is the right thing for me. It's more like, I think, like you mentioned, like a print ad, or like maybe a landing page on a website somewhere.
It's probably all the above. Okay, but the real thing is that you have to be able to draw people into whatever that document or website or online social media profile are all about. You have to be able to draw people in for one reason or another. One of the ways that I've worked with clients that's been really effective, and we're going to get into this tomorrow, is I want to say probably 2018. So again, pre-COVID, 7 years ago, things have changed somewhat since then, but it still applies. She had a very tight geographical constraint because she had to be within 10 minutes of an aging relative. So we took about 45 minutes one afternoon, and we found all of the major companies and smaller companies that were within 10 minutes of where she lived. And she sent a summary cover letter, very brief cover letter, with a copy of her resume, and said, available to have a conversation about any of these types of roles where you may need support. In 3 weeks, she had 2 offers.
That's great.
Okay. And she's down in South Jersey. All right. So this was not, Metro Manhattan or Chicago or anything like that. She was asking for some very tight geographic consideration, but it worked.
That's a great strategy. I think
it worked. Okay, because there are 2 reasons why it worked, and Chris, you'll understand what I'm saying with this too. Her share of voice was 100%. Nobody was sending letters with resumes saying that they could help in these particular areas of somebody's business, and she didn't know any of the businesses personally or formally before sending these out. But she had several conversations and ended up getting 2 offers and stayed with one company about 5.5 years before she ended up moving on. Okay. All righty then. So everybody's clear on the homework? Thumbs up? Okay.
I just wanted to ask a quick question.
Yeah,
Do you
Yasmin,
want,
go ahead.
Do you want us to also work on the LinkedIn or just those specific things that you said with like the car and like
Let
explaining
me put
each
it,
accomplishment?
I'm not going to tell you not to work on LinkedIn, but what I'm trying to do here in each of these first 4 nights is to give you digestible pieces of quote unquote homework that you can do and say, "Hey, listen, I'm making progress toward my job search goals by doing this." Okay? I mean, later in the week, we'll talk about having an offline call, and if any or all of you want to work with me toward this end, I mean, it's what I do for a living, obviously, and um, I've had some really good successes with this because I know what it is that is appropriate to say about individuals or not. And creating the story and telling the story is an important thing, both in writing, online, and then verbally, in the interview process. So the goal with tonight was to make sure that I was giving you, again, bite-sized pieces of things that you can do. Um, if you want to work on your LinkedIn profile, by all means, I'm certainly not going to say no. But I also do that as well.
Okay, so there's not gonna be like it's not gonna be like a day of LinkedIn. It was kind of just like here's some good ideas on this
I,
day.
I, I don't have time in the context of these
Okay.
5 days to do it. I mean, I would love to. I mean, like I was saying when I showed the slide, I could spend 2 hours just on this. But in the context of what LinkedIn is related to your full job search, it's important. It's a component of it. But the other pieces are just as important, which is why I want to, what I want to be able to do in the 5 days that we're here together.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay?
So, Bill,
Um,
just for the homework for the car format,
right.
uh, you mentioned originally what two like. Can you just explain it again? Um,
What specifically are you thinking of or referring to?
looking at the screenshot. You said for every, I guess, accomplishment, like description, circumstance, action, and results. So we want to bullet point each one of those.
Yes. And detail is important, especially in action steps. Okay. I mean, again, I'm making it up, but if you had a situation where a client came to you and said they had a product launch in 3 months or 60 days, I mean, some of them are even less than that, depending on what it is. And so the circumstance was a very short timeline and a very testy client. The action steps you took were all the things that you did, and the outcome was that you had all of what they needed ready in 60 days that included A, B, C, D, and E, and they had a successful launch, and they're now at, I don't know, $25 million in annual sales. I'm making it up. But you can frame the story related to the circumstances. And the other thing that comes out of doing your accomplishments in this format is if I ask you to tell me it's on your resume, launch new product in 60 days, successfully created campaign for new product launch in 60 days. All right. I mean, I'm very much paraphrasing. And somebody says, tell me more about that. You can say 5-10 seconds on the circumstances, 5-10 seconds on the action steps, maybe 15, and then the outcome was. So then all of a sudden you have a 20 or 30-second bullet pointed story that you've given them the top line, a little bit of the middle line, and the bottom line quickly, like that. Okay. Then you've demonstrated that not only do you know what you're talking about by being able to do the work, but you're able to communicate about it. And you can do that with a senior level person. Like you could walk into the president's office of that company and say, yeah, I did this campaign. This is what was going on. This is what I did. This is what the outcome was. Okay. So that it provides a framework and a discipline and almost a script for what the interviews are all about. And that's something I spend a lot of time on with people is making sure that you can deliver it. It's like you get somebody, and I'm exaggerating here, but well, I was doing this, and this, and we had a wonderful outcome. You have to it has to be like conversational, but if you rehearse it properly and you create it properly and you rehearse it with yourself, and I often say to people, record yourself, see if you like what your responses are. Okay, and we're going to get into some interview questions. This is on day 4, but again, we're building a house here, and the better we build it at the foundation and in the studs, is the more solid that house is going to be as you go out into the marketplace. Is that answering your question?
Yep. How far, like how many accomplishments, like how far should we go back?
As many as you think are appropriate. Okay, I'm saying 5 to 10 for tonight. But if you get on a roll and you have 20 that you can remember, and you may not remember every detail about them, and that's fine. It's better to have more than less. Especially if you have them.
And these would specifically be like stuff that you would possibly put on your resume in order to have like the conversation pieces or quick responses for, correct?
Take the word possibly out of that sentence. The answer is
Gotcha.
you absolutely will. Okay. And in your case, Scott, and you and I have had this conversation offline, some of your non-academic related activities are going to be way, way more important to interviewers when you get out there. I mean, you handled some really difficult situations with your organization on campus in a 6, 7, 8 month period, whatever it was. And being able to properly frame those, describe those, and then talk about the resolutions that you brought into being, which could have been disastrous, okay, based on what I remember of the conversations we had. Those are really important. Okay, so don't minimize, I'm saying this to everybody now, don't minimize things or take them for granted, because there are things that everybody on this line can do that others on the line can't. And it's often easy to take things for granted that you do like the back of your hand. Like I sang with a guy who was one of the best keyboard players I've ever seen based on what he could sight read and ad lib. And this is back in New Jersey. And one night we're at a rehearsal and we're going through this, I don't know, 5-minute song, whatever it was. And he says, as soon as he ended the song, he says, "Oh, this key is flat." And he presses the key. And I'm like, "What?" I said, "Jack, are you kidding me?" And he said, "No, listen." So he pressed the key and then he pressed the octave below and the octave above. And sure enough, it was a little bit flat, but he figured that out as he was playing because he has perfect pitch. And he said he didn't know he had perfect pitch, that nobody else did, until he was 17. Okay. So, I mean, that's an example that might not be relevant for any of the interviewing or resume related stuff that we're talking about on this call, but it's a good example of something he had it from age 8 and he didn't know other people didn't. Okay. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, reactions? If anything else comes up, feel free to text. I think you all have my cell phone number, so feel free to text me between now and tomorrow evening, and we'll see you at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. And again, good luck with everything that you're working on, and look forward to seeing the outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for your time. Apologies on coming a little bit late. My computer is giving me a bunch of trouble.
It's all
So
right.
for some reason, it had me trying to join a Google Meetings or something like that, and so it said
Oh,
I was in the waiting room
you
for that.
you clicked on the Google Meets, not on the Zoom.
Right?
And
Yeah.
I couldn't pull it away. I couldn't take it out of Google Calendar because I was sending out all the invites with that. By the way, did you have a chance to, or will you have a chance to see last night?
I'll be able to watch it either after this or tomorrow morning for sure, if that works.
You did get it though. That's all I wanted to know.
Yes, sir. I did.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, you got it. We'll talk tomorrow night. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye.